I was kind of taught by people around me that no, we're all connected. And the more you allow yourself to be connected, the more it's kind of a powerful exchange of energy. That's kind of how I try to live my life, is like, let me not bang my head up against a wall. Let me just step back and be like, okay, next. And if something's really working and the flow of energy is there, I follow it.
This is a conversation with Nalisha Estrellas. Nalisha is a teaching artist, visual artist, tattoo artist, and mural artist. We chat about nature, intuition, and tattoo design. Welcome to the Solopreneur Playground Talks, where we explore big questions in light ways. To get involved, visit solopreneurplayground.com. Now let's hear from Nalisha. Well, Nalisha, thank you so much for joining me in the Solopreneur Playground. I'm so glad you made time for our conversation today. The very first question I like to ask is to do the opposite of what we normally do, which is to anti-pitch yourself. So if you were to meet someone you did not want them to buy into your work or contact you for more information, how would you describe what you do?
Yeah, so this was such a fun question, by the way. I never thought of it pitching myself this way, but what a fun mental exercise. So here's what I came up with. Super analytical, sensitive artist obsessed with nature, unrealistic expectations of environmental stewardship, and very expensive rates for incredibly detailed art.
I love that. Super analytical, incredibly expensive, unrealistic.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like up the ante right away. Like
Yes.
you're in this or you're not. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you with me or are you against?
Right.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So nature is a theme throughout, like all of your work. I think but can you describe the kinds of art that you do briefly and how, because I think I could bucket everything you do into some kind of art practice now that I think about it. Can you just name those and maybe and if you want to tell the story of like how you got to those particular art forms, I'd be really curious to hear.
Yeah, sure. So fine line drawing or illustration, that's like the fundamental art practice of mine. And then I also do large scale public art installations like murals. I also do tattoo design and just started a tattoo venture where I'm putting my actual fine line illustrations on humans. But it all comes back to really fine line illustrations that are inspired by nature. So I'll like go into nature and I'll see like a plant or a flower and I'm like, that's beautiful. What if I took that plant or flower and like put a spin, like a psychedelic spin on it, or made it like a space flower or like a sci-fi lens where I'm just like, it has the root of the reality of the shape and the concept of what it actually is, but then it becomes something completely different where when you're looking at my art, you'll be looking at something and it'll look familiar, but then you look closer and you're like, oh, that's kind of like an evolution from something that I recognize in nature, but now it has become this. So I'm always playing with nature because she's so amazing. She does so much, and nature evolves over time. So yeah, just try to capture that evolution in my art.
Yeah. And when did you start this love affair with nature, like observing it and being inspired by it? Is there a origin story to that?
Wow, like as long as I can remember, my parents were really good about getting us out into nature, like camping and taking us to the park. And I had pets my whole life. So going out and just walking in parks or just being by myself under a tree canopy or something. Yeah, it was always kind of just there. And instead of thinking it as separate from me, I was kind of taught by people around me that no, we're all connected. And the more you allow yourself to be connected, the more it's kind of a powerful exchange of energy. So, and my parents weren't like super woo woo, like hippie kind of vibe. They were just practical and they were like, look, we need nature in our lives. So the more you're exposed to nature, the more you appreciate it and the more you can kind of be an active steward for nature. So just from a little kid, like we were always just kind of like, this is important, this tiny little thing, this is important, or don't step on a spider, take it outside, that kind of mentality, just like
Yeah.
really from an early age. So I just carried that and just got even more connected when I moved to Seattle, where I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, which has its own beautiful natural Sonoran Desert magical landscape. But the complete antithesis of that is the Pacific Northwest. And I have fallen in love with the Pacific Northwest, still appreciating where I grew up, but still finding like little tiny treasures in whatever region I'm in. So, yeah.
Yeah. Did you live, you said in Tucson, were you in a house or an apartment like in the city, or did you live kind of further out? How close to nature were you in when you were growing up? Curious.
Very close. So we lived on the edge of town back in like the 80s, where it was the edge of town. Now it's like more central because of development, just like everywhere. But I would go out and play in my front yard, and you could see like maybe 3 blocks from our front yard was like the edge of where the concrete ended, and that's where the desert kind of lived naturally. So our
Whoa.
neighbors were coyotes and javelinas. And like we would see coyotes at dusk almost every day. And they weren't afraid of us. We weren't afraid of them. We just lived in concert with each other. And the javelinas were more aggro. So we didn't really want to be close to them, but we saw them all the time. So yeah, very close to nature. And we weren't afraid of it, I think. Even as little kids, like we were taught, if you see a javelina, don't run up to it. But coyotes are chill unless you really mess with them. But yeah, we were just always exploring in nature because it was right there. So we would go hiking into the desert, knowing that there are scorpions, rattlesnakes, all these things. It was like part of our growing up. Like, we're going to go play. Okay, bye. My parents knew that we were going to go into this desert, and they knew that we were hopefully smart enough not to do anything stupid. But yeah, it was always there.
Yeah, but at the edge of town, that's such an interesting kind of symbol or like place to be. Like it's not foreign, but it's not like it's not far away, but it's also you're not like I think of people that grow up in a farm or like it shapes your understanding of what animals are, like how are you in nature? There's something really interesting about you being at the edge of town, being taught very consciously nature is important and you don't have to be afraid of it and here's how to and you have the freedom to play in it. I think that's a really beautiful almost like symbolic place to grow up in a way. It's very very
Very
interesting.
grateful for that experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And then coming to the Pacific Northwest, like such different plant life. I imagine, yeah, just the even for me, like coming from Virginia, New York, like the East Coast, just like the I don't know, the number and the size of just like the plants and therefore like the whole the kind of the biodiversity and just the it feels like just maybe the way that development is done here too. There just feels like there's more nature preserved between the development, I guess. Like it's just sort of part of it. There's a little bit more space and breathing room and just plant life around. Like I think it's a lot harder to find. I feel like there are whole 100-mile stretches in in the East Coast where there's like nothing. There's like trees and the line down the road kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine going from the desert to here. Yeah, was it a? Did you move here like and then the nature was part of it? Or was nature part of like your decision about moving here? Actually, not sure.
Oh,
How did you
like,
decide?
yes,
Yeah.
it was huge. I visited here before I moved here. So my brother was living up here, and I visited him, and everywhere he took me in his car, we went over a bridge, over some sort of body of water, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's so much water," because I was like
Yeah.
landlocked my whole life. And just like seeing that there was just a marina full of boats and the ocean was right there, or there was a huge lake, not just one lake, but there's another lake over there. It's two separate bodies of water. Like, that blew my mind. And I happened to have visited Seattle in August, which it was like the perfect time. Like, I wasn't here in the middle of winter where it was like dark and rainy as hell. So it was like I really got like the primo experience of Seattle, and it was a total trip. I was just like, there's a whole other world that I want to explore. So, and it was the perfect time that we could just move here and just like start a new life. So it's great. My partner was up for it, and we came out here, and yeah, just like drank it up.
Oh,
And we
that's
really
cool.
liked that from the desert. Like we were always putting lotion on because it's so dry in the desert. I never had to wear lotion, because it's so like moist here.
It
So
is. The
yeah,
water, like you said, there's water, you could see it, there's water in the air. It's just, yeah, like that's part of that life. Just like there's so much life because there's so much water. It's really
yeah,
big part of it. But then you go east, a couple hours and you're in the desert again
in the
from here. I
desert.
think it's
Yeah,
also really interesting. This area is so fascinating. Um,
yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. I'm curious how dance fits in to your story because I you were talking about the types of like, illustration and the different canvases. There's human canvas, there's the
Yeah.
big public spaces, and then, well, you also I know you draw and paint on wood, and so there's all these different materials. Do you see dance as part of your art practice or your nature? Like how does dance and nature and art work together for you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I've been thinking about that a lot recently because I've had like little moments of reflection because yeah, just kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm doing what I've been wanting to do for so long. Like, just how did this happen? So, a lot of times when I was doing these fine line drawings, they were acts of meditation, acts of relieving stress.
Hmm.
Because when I first got here, even though I was in love with Seattle, I was really working in some super toxic environments, working with some super aggro people who weren't really happy and they were taking all their energy, their negative energy on everybody else. And so naturally, I like empathically feel things strongly. So I was like absorbing a lot of that. So art was a therapy and dance was another kind of therapy. And the two of them worked almost tangentially with each other as far as inspiration, and then getting out into nature, going camping, just really exploring the PNW. Like all of those things were coming through my, you know, mental space, coming out into my art. And it was just like I was trying to channel really heavy negative energy and turn it into something beautiful. And that was just a practice that I found so completely perfect for what I needed it to be. It's just like I could just dive in and disappear and breathe and create something nice. And then I could be like, hey, I did that. And somebody else would probably like it. And they're like, what's your inspiration? Then I would tell them about my dance community and how I've been in dance since I was a kid. And just, it sparked some really cool conversations. So,
Neat.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. It makes me think of I I've been like learning a lot about, yeah, like trauma processing and how your body is involved in that, right? And seeing dance in particular, because movement, like so much of just stress, like your body responds by needing to like complete the stress cycle and move, like move through it, and that dance, like in particular, like more than, or not more, but it has like a special power, I think, to like move stress through the body because you are literally moving, right? And you're moving in a safe place in a safe way freely. It's like, yeah, I felt that as well. That like, oh wow, like when you're moving your body more than like in some ways than like talking or different mental things that you might do or just
Yeah.
storytelling or like those are all important. But I think there is something really essential about just like moving your body. So I can see camping, moving, like moving through space, through nature, digest, like helping your body digest all of that stuff makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. There,
Yeah.
I learned a lot about like somatic therapy through dance. And
Mm,
Um, the somatic therapy lets you get in contact with movement in your body to unlock trauma. And I found out about somatic therapy just like, I don't know, 8 years ago. But I, for reasons that you were just describing, having dance in my life was just such a good therapy because I would sometimes go to dance class having come from the office 8 hours of just like crap energy, just like, ugh, what am I doing here? And I would start dancing and all that energy would like just come out in my, and sometimes I would be crying while I was dancing. And because it was such a safe space, everyone just like, you could just bring whatever emotion you wanted and nobody would like stop and be like, are you okay? They just knew intuitively that you're working through some shit and that's okay. And this is where you're supposed to be. And this is how you're supposed to be working through that. And we're here if
yeah.
you do this, but keep going. And it was such a good, like, healthy place for me to unload all of that. And I think that's the only way I survived and kept going back to those jobs. It's like I had
Yeah.
dance. I don't know what else I would have done if I didn't have dance. Like,
Oh
it would
yeah.
have been
Now
a
you're giving
different
me
outlet.
chills describing that. Yeah, it's so powerful. I feel like dancers and artists, and you're both, have just such a healthy, like whenever I learn, like the more that I learn about psychology, the more I'm like, oh yeah, this is what like artists and dancers do. Like as far as how to process emotions, like here's how to move through the things and how to accept them without judging them and holding them down and tight and suppressing them. Like it makes it worse, right? Or this is not how you. And I'm like, oh, that's like artists do all those things intuitively. And I think again, dance, when you're, because it's in your body and you're not, sitting trying to make a specific outcome or trying to, I don't know, do something that could be even more mental pressure or more kind of in your head, like you're literally getting out of your head and being in a space, particularly if it's safe and healthy as an environment, obviously. um, yeah, it's just fascinating. Like you said, like you don't even have to be trained in therapy or know exactly why it's helpful. It's just like, it's working. Like I'm moving
Yeah.
things. Yeah, that's really cool. I have a friend who credits dance with like keeping her like alive, like in similar way that you're describing. Like
Yep.
you can keep going and showing up and like staying human. She also, I think her dance practice, even though she was like a full-time teacher, and like that was her kind of saving grace through that. So that's really cool. There's a connection there with nature and the dance and the movement and the art that I can't describe it, but it's so beautiful. Like I see the flow of like maybe the energy or the how that works together. I can see it. It's very cool. Um, Neat. Well, thank you. I feel like that gives a really cool picture, even for me, knowing some of your work. Hearing some of this helps me see, like when you say I'm inspired by nature, like kind of what your individual, like where that comes from, what in what way are you inspired, or how, what does that look like, and like how do you get inspired, and why is it inspiring or meaningful? I'm feeling I'm getting a whole nother like layer to it, even having known your work and talked to you before about this. So I'm really grateful for that. So what is alive for you right now? You have, because you have got, I mean, you've always got so many awesome things going on, and I feel like you're someone to just like you're very good at staying in the moment of what's like honoring, like this is what I want to do now, and I'm going to make it work with like the rest of my work, with whatever commitments I've got going on. Or so I'm very curious for you right now. We haven't talked in a couple of months, and what's exciting to you right now? Where's your energy at?
Yeah. Well, what's happening right now, where all my energy is just kind of digesting the fact that I have a tattoo license. I just got it 2 weeks ago. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Like, can't believe it. But I've been in a tattoo apprenticeship for 6 months now. Um, and it's a funny story, that, it's funny where life takes you. And like, speaking of toxic work environments, I met somebody who I befriended in a really toxic job, and we both have left since. But our paths are were meant to cross because this person connected me with a tattoo artist, who was looking for apprentices. And what's significant about that is 10 years ago in Seattle, I tried to become a tattoo apprentice without any success. Kept hitting wall after wall, just like nobody was interested. Nobody wanted to like take on somebody and train them. And, fine, that's cool. But I was like, man, that's a bummer. I really want to do this. So, like last year, met this person, connect me with a tattoo artist who was moving here looking for apprentices. And she's incredibly talented and such a good teacher and just an incredible mentor. So since October or since September, yeah, I've just been really kind of working with her to learn the trade, learn all the things you need to know. And because of my art practice, the learning curve has been a little bit more swift than expected. And I think just because I have kind of my fine line detail talent and skill, it's just using a different, tool. So um, that's where all my energy is now. I'm just like spending a lot of time in the tattoo studio. It's like one of my favorite places to be. It's like almost a second home right now. I am practicing with two other incredible artists who are also apprenticing under our mentor, and just really grateful for the whole experience, especially knowing that it is really hard to get an apprenticeship. If you want to learn tattoo, it just kind of has to magically fall in your lap, or you have to just like bang on someone's door or just like live in that world to kind of like get your foot in the door. So it's, yeah, just a lot of gratitude every day. And I just executed my two clients. I had to tattoo myself first. So done. That was an experience and I'm very happy with the result. And then I tattooed a very close friend last week. And then I tattooed my partner on Friday. So I've got
Wow,
three humans under my belt. And it's just incredible. Like I woke up
so
Saturday
cool.
morning, and I was just like, he's walking around with like the bandage on the fresh tattoo. And I was like, holy shit, I did that. And you're like, yeah, you did. It's like, it just feels really good. But yeah, harnessing the energy into like 10 years ago, it didn't work out. It wasn't meant to be that 10 years ago. Had to, maybe the universe was telling me like, work more on your art. And is this really what you want to do? Like there's so much out there, but yeah, I really wanted to do it. And I jumped at the first opportunity that I had, and now it's happening and it's incredible. And I realized just how special it is because it's not easy. It's like one of the hardest kinds of art to do just because of the safety measures, the, cross contamination measures, and just making people feel safe and knowing that they're physically safe while you're executing this really intense piece of art on their skin that's going to be there forever. Like you can't, paint over it like a mural, or you can't crumple it up or burn it like a piece of paper. It's like on them forever. And that is so humbling. And that blows my mind. That's a whole nother like, but really happy about it. And continuing my art practice with public art, still doing murals, still doing uh, drawings at my home studio. That's like my escape. That's where I go, like my quiet place. Like, let's just be with me right now. What am I going to draw? Oh, let's draw some poppies. Like, okay. So yeah, keeping it all like there, but the tattoo thing is pretty intense, and just so thankful that I'm on this path that I pretty much intend to be for the rest of my life. Like this is my retirement plan, you know, this is it.
Tattooing specifically, or the combination of things that you're
A
doing?
combination of things, but
Yeah.
as far as a steady income, tattooing
Ah,
is it's more steady than murals. Murals come and go; they don't happen all year round.
yeah.
But tattooing is like, yeah, I'm in it for the long game now.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. I really appreciate how, as an artist, you do seamlessly, I think I've mentioned the version of this book to you before, but kind of move between like the it's not strictly like money making, but like, okay, I'm in the world and like kind of being with yourself. And you were talking about art as a therapy, like for yourself, and then being like, okay, like I'm doing this and then I've got a result of it that someone else might enjoy, and then being like, yeah, and that person can buy it. And it just feels like there's so little, when you talk about it, it feels like there's so little tension in those things. It's just like it's like a problem to solve, but it doesn't feel like there's much baggage for you. It's like a very practical problem. Like even when you talked about 10 years ago, you really wanted to find that apprenticeship and you just couldn't. And the way you're talking about it, it's like of course there's disappointment, like there's feelings, right? But there just doesn't feel like there's a heaviness to it that I don't know, that I personally experience. And I think a lot of artists um, end up, I don't know, feeling kind of this like, I'm at odds with the world, or like I can't, there's kind of like a, yeah, I don't know, baggage. I'll call it psychological baggage with it. I think it's fascinating hearing. I love hearing you talk about working out these kinds of problems because it just feels so simple. Like when you talk about it, I'm like, yeah. So hearing it, I didn't realize that tattooing was like also like a retirement plan. Like, yeah, I have to have a retirement plan. And like, there's gonna be a steady flow of people that always want tattooing, and now I know how to do it, and I love it. And here we like that makes sense. I think that's
Yeah.
really interesting.
I
Yeah.
think for me, like the thing that really resonates over the years is like if I'm creating something that I really genuinely love, and it's something that I would either put in my house or put on my skin, that is that authenticity. Somebody else is more likely to connect with that than if I'm trying to create something that other people will like. Like
Yeah.
I have just found that
Mm.
it's a harder road to go up. So like let's just not do that. Let's just create art that I love and other people might like it. And I found that to be true. Like my favorite paintings sell faster than the ones that I'm like, meh. You know? Like it's just
Fascinating, right? Without doing anything different with it, it just, yeah, it just resonates somehow.
yeah.
Oh,
It
yeah,
makes sense. And like
yeah.
I not to get super woo woo, but I think that about nature, like the power of nature is like she goes with the flow. She creates her own flow and she goes with the flow. And, that's kind of how I try to live my life is like, let me not bang my head up against a wall. Let me just step back and be like, okay, next. And if something's really working and the flow of energy is there, I follow it. I'm just like, okay, things are happening. Oh my gosh, people are responding. Like, I don't know. It's just, I really try to listen to my intuition. Like my gut got me here. It got me
Mm,
out of those toxic jobs, away from those people, because I was like, I don't need to be surrounding myself with this kind of energy. Yeah, you're right. Don't move, shift. So I kind of take it back to like, yeah, just like watching from nature, just like be
yeah.
agile.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, adapt. Yeah. Who's better at adapting than nature? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And creating these like systems that like come up from, I don't know, that work and are like the right level of complexity and the right level of adaptable and stable. And I think, I don't know, I think as humans, I find it very hard like that, like we need both order and like, I don't know if it's chaos, but change, maybe like change is going to happen, right? And I think so much of like our brains issues have to do with like trying to balance those things. And, and nature is great. Like there's stability, there's change, and it's like the right balance of like, like there's never a wrong balance in nature. It always adjusts back to the right balance of those things. And I think there is something interesting about, I think, the way that we want to enforce order or try to enforce order. It tends to be, I think, that we're trying to enforce more order than there actually is in nature, but nature is like beautifully ordered. It just doesn't make sense always at first glance. Or like, how does this work? Or why does it work? Or it wouldn't be what you thought. So I think there's something. I had a therapist once talk about. I think it was about intuition, or I can't remember if he was talking about emotions or intuition, but how like I think it was intuition being just like something like 100 times faster and smarter than your conscious, like analytical brain, because it's like your your unconscious brain is processing. I mean, I think it literally was like 100 times more information at all times than you can think about. I mean, I don't know what the actual numbers are, right? But basically that there's a intelligence to intuition that if you were to slow it down and say, let me analyze this, let me figure out, and it's just like, yeah, you might get to the same solution, but it will literally take you like, an order of magnitude longer to do it. And you might
Mm.
miss a lot of, you might discount or miss a lot of information that is. So anyway, I think there's something really cool about tapping into intuition as like a part of nature in us, where you get to, yeah, not like, I don't know, try to enforce order where there isn't order, or try to make something happen when it's not going to happen. And you just said something about the flow of energy that I think is interesting. I think you moved kind of seamlessly from like the flow of your energy, like if there's a lot of energy somewhere for you, and then seeing, oh, there's energy here for other people too. I think that I've never thought of it quite that way. I think that's a really interesting, like you follow your energy, and then when you find like, oh, this is resonating, or the thing that I'm doing in my own interest or energy is like creating energy for other people, and then being like, that's a sign, like let me move into that. And like that kind of like um the way you describe the movement of energy, I've never put those like sort of phrases together, or the idea of someone like people having that energy that you kind of flow with. I wonder if that's also part of what makes it feel more seamless for you, that it's like my energy, their energy, it's all nature's energy. It's all like human energy for part of nature. And it
Yeah.
doesn't feel maybe there's a tension between me and them or something. It's just like energy. Where's the energy? It's
Yeah. I
interesting.
mean, it
Yeah.
sparks conversation. Like when you create something and somebody responds to it and then asks follow-up questions and then says, have you ever thought of this? Or like, what about this? Or, that's how I started doing murals. Somebody was just like, I could totally see this on a wall. I'm like, whoa, you can? Wait, so can I. Wait, do the
Yeah.
thing. Like just having a conversation just like opens your mind, or like when I did some of my drawings back in college, somebody would be like, I could totally get this tatted on me. I'm like, you would? Really?
Wait a
That
second.
it's that like this you like this that much? And they're like, yeah, why not? It's like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. And that's what I mean by people engaging and responding, and then it just takes my brain and it opens up, like, instead of these blinders, it opens up this peripheral of like, oh yeah, there's this whole landscape of avenues to go with art. And then
Yeah.
suddenly that toxic job doesn't seem like the end all be all. Suddenly there's a whole new world. And I'm like, oh, I have choices. I have options. And it's really liberating. So
Yes. Yes.
those
That's what I love about
conversations.
solopreneurship too.
Yeah.
That's like the idea of just like you can figure out how to do this, yeah, like a way that you want to. This being, provide economic value, show up in the world, like, all this kind of stuff, like just make money and like pay your bills, like on your terms, kind of. It's very cool. Like I think it's very, very hard, but like so cool. Um, that's so interesting. I'm curious now. So you're talking. It's so interesting that with murals and with tattoo, which are the two kind of expansions of your illustration and artwork, that they were suggestions by someone that hadn't you didn't sit and think about, oh, I'd like to start tattooing, or I'd like to start doing murals. Someone else was like, it would be cool, and then you kind of went with that. I think that's really interesting. I'm curious if tattooing, and I don't know, it probably depends on how you do it. Like if you only, I know there are artists that just, they only tattoo like their work, for example, or like I'm curious about the collaboration, because then it's someone's own skin, and then like tattoo artists, I think there's such a range of, are you just executing what someone gives you, or are you the artist of the thing that you're putting on? Like, how do you think about collaboration when it comes to tattooing? Does it feel different than murals or than illustrations that you're guiding, or start, how does that work for you?
Yeah, it can work a lot of different ways. Like some artists do anything and everything. Some
Right.
artists just do work that they create. So
Yeah.
the ideal client is going to come to me because they're already attracted to the art that I'm creating, like my style.
Yeah.
So that's the ideal situation. And then if they have something that they want specifically, maybe we can do a collaboration where like they want a couple of calla lilies, but they want it in my style. So then the conversation is like, let's discuss what that would look like. Let's put together like your expectations for where you want it on your body for the rest of your life with my style and my kind of composition. And let's work together to create something that is perfect for you and that, I can execute on your skin. So that's kind of how that works. And that's kind of my goal as an artist, is to only create tattoos that are in my style, and things that I compose myself with, references and inspiration from the client.
Yeah.
So I'm never
Yeah.
going to do like portraiture, for example.
Yeah.
Or if somebody really loves their dog, like I love your dog too, but I'm not going to be a dog portrait tattoo artist. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're coming to me because they like also like botanicals and ecotones and natural landscapes and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. So it really is an extension of your style, in your view, is what they're. Is it similar to mural design then? Because I imagine that process is pretty similar, or how does it
the
compare
process
with
for
murals?
murals is a little bit different because a lot of times the people who are offering to pay you for murals, they want more of a representation of like the community. So in that case,
Mm,
I would be doing a little bit of portraiture or representation of like human figures, where that's not really heavy in my art style, but it's something that I can do.
yeah.
And some of my art, like for the dancers specifically, like there are figure representations in the dance style that I've done in the past. And I can just kind of take that and like make it a non-dancer representing like somebody in the community doing something for the community, and then having people in the community represented through a
Mm,
mural. So it's a little bit different. It's not as
mhm.
personal because it is so broad facing and so public facing that
Yeah.
it's more kind of like, you know, um, we want to showcase, our history and like the where we're going. And well, then that entails doing research on what is specific about that area that is going to go into the mural. So it's a little bit different,
Yeah,
but
that's
still fun
interesting.
and
Still, right.
stretches. It stretches and flexes the artistic muscles.
Yeah, as a challenge. Yeah, I think as an artist or like any creative work, you have to kind of enjoy that challenge, like the constraints and the new problems. Like, yeah, if there's no enjoyment, like why are you doing why are you doing this
Yeah.
work? But I
And
hadn't
that's
thought of, yeah, with murals, it is like a community. It's a one to many kind of inherently like this. Whereas tattoos is very personal, or illustration that you're going to keep in your space. It's very one on one. Actually, I hadn't thought about that component. That's really interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, fascinating. I'm curious with the tattooing, what attracted to it? What attracted you to it at first, and has that changed? Because you mentioned, it's an extension of your art. You're gonna be able to do it for a long time. Um,
Mhm.
what initially drew you to it? Was it those same things?
Initially, I mean, I always knew that I wanted to get tattoos. And, every time I got a tattoo, I would like talk with the artist, like, how did you get into this? Like, are you an artist first or are you a tattoo artist? Because some tattoo artists, tattooing is all they do. They
Hmm.
don't do other art. They're not every tattoo artist is also a painter or this and that. So it's like we all come to it from our own journey. Um, but yeah, I would always strike up conversations with them, and it would make me kind of curious about the industry. But I think the more I did these fine line designs that had a flowiness to it, again because of the dance inspiration, it was my compositions always had a sense of movement, which was kind of unique. And somebody one day said, if you put that on skin, it like contours the body in a beautiful way where it's always looking like it's moving because it's on an organic canvas. And that just blew my mind because they were totally right. Um, and all the tattoos that I had gotten at that point were like, you know, uh, not flowy, and I hadn't
Hmm.
really designed my own tattoos. And then I started to design my own tattoos, and it shifted my art completely because not only was I thinking about the flow of the composition, I was thinking about the contour of the body, where it's going to be placed, how does that affect the art and the person wearing it. And I don't know, everything just kind of came together. And I have three of my favorite tattoos that I designed for myself that I've had them for, over a decade now. And they're just, I think because of uh, the whole thought process, the holistic thought process of what is going into it and where it's going is like just culminated in a beautiful way. And then I think about that now, everything that I create is just like, yeah, the flow. But especially for a tattoo, it's like, yeah, I like stuff with geometric shapes and I like the organic, composition kind of like complementing those geometric shapes. Like there's
Yeah,
like this cool dichotomy happening, but I don't know. I don't know if I really answered your question, but it's like an ongoing kind of like there's so much nuance for that kind of thing that I'm just kind of like I think that's what I'm digesting now is just like pulling it apart and re-looking at my designs and like what can be a tattoo. I don't know.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. It's a whole different canvas. But it's interesting that, yeah, like you came to it through wanting to get tattoos, and that your first tattoos weren't flowy, and that you're like, again, I think it speaks to that. I think how tapped in you are to the flow and change of, like your experience and what interests you, and kind of where I just feel so much freedom when you talk in like going with the flow, right? The flow that you talked about. So I think that's really, it makes a lot of sense. You're like, I want tattoos. I don't need to analyze exactly why. I'm going to get them. And then in the process, you're talking to, again, also I see this theme of like talking to people, having these like energetic exchanges that are very open with like, I'm really receptive. Like, I really want to know like what your experience is. Why do you do, what's your story? How do we, and just kind of like letting what emerges from that emerge.
Yeah,
I think that's really interesting. And what emerges is so productive. You're like, how about I, like I would like to do a version of what you're doing. And it, like it really, it's changing your life in this kind of like unpredetermined way. I think is
totally.
really beautiful. Yeah. I think that's really cool. Huh. That's so interesting. Yeah. I just can't, my brain gets stuck on, like the human body as a canvas. I think because I did a lot of painting when I was younger, like a teenager. And so I'm very like canvas is like it's such a real thing to me, like the texture of canvas and then the texture of paper too, right? Because you like drawings for the canvases or whatever. So just like the human body as a canvas, like it's so. As someone that's never tattooed someone, it blows my mind that like that you probably in a similar way you're like, nah, I did it, I'm doing it in a similar way. I'm having like a man, like you did that. That's great. That anyone does it is so cool. Like it's such a unique canvas. Like it's spongy and it's alive. It's like, but it's similar because it's not that different from canvas. So anyway, my brain is just like, whoa, how does that
I have to tell you a really quick
feel?
story because
Yeah, tell
the
me.
first time I ever thought about my art going on skin, I was 19 and I was dating somebody who, you know, we'd always hang out together and I would draw, we would listen to music and draw and whatever. And one of my drawings I left at his house and he really liked it. So I was like, okay, well, you can have it, whatever. And like a week later, I'm hanging out and it's summertime and we were about to go swimming. And he takes off his shirt and my tattoo or the drawing that I had was on his back. And
Oh
he's
my
like, check
god.
this out. And I was shocked for I don't know how many minutes. I remember not saying anything for a long time because I was like, whoa. Like he took my drawing, went to a tattoo artist and got it on his skin. I was 19. I'd never thought of my anything that I would ever draw be going on somebody forever
Oh
for
my
their life.
gosh.
And then after
Yeah.
that experience, I was like, why not? Like it just shifted that whole thing. But it's funny because yeah, the human canvas, like
Yeah.
I saw it on paper. I had just, put all this color into it and then it was on his skin and it was just like the same thing. But I was like, but that's your skin. You're going to have that till you die. Like, is that a responsible decision? And according to him, it was like, yeah, why not? And I was like, okay, I'm thinking way too hard about this. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like it just happened.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. You mentioned at the beginning, part of your anti-pitch was being like super analytical. Do you feel like, because it sounds like that guy was probably wouldn't, I assume, and I'm making generalizations, but might not describe himself as super analytical. The sense that
So
he got a
yeah.
drawing and then it was on his skin and he hit squid.
He's like, I
His
like
response.
it forever.
Do you feel like do you feel like that super analytical part of you has been affected by people like that over time? Like, do you feel like you're more and more kind of like intuitive? Is that like a struggle for you? Or like now I'm curious about like how that part of you relates to the part that's like, yeah, let's go with the flow. Like, how do those parts get along in you? Has it
I
changed?
think that is where I have to listen to my gut. Like I guess I'm very, even though I am very analytical about certain things, I always, so my intuition has actually saved my life. I can count 3 times, legit saved me from death, like within
Wow.
moments. And because it's happened 3 times, maybe I have learned to listen to that feeling or that voice or just that sensation where, like, no, 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 no. If you ignore this, something's bad going to happen. So I
Hmm.
think because of those experiences, I can release my analytical mind and I can pay attention to what I'm feeling. And I think it goes back to dance and somatic, kind of like there's some kind of growth in my past where I made this connection that it was like a aha moment and my whole body shifted into this area where I'm just like, okay, I'm tapped in now. I know the language, I can read the signs, I can feel the things. And because I have that, I will always kind of like, this feels good or this feels right. Or like, uh-uh,
Or the opposite. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
the hairs on the back of my neck. This something's not, even though it seems really great and there's a lot of money involved, just like my whole body is reacting in a way that I'm like going to listen to. And the more I listen, the more really good things happen because I'm listening. And when I ignore it, I learn, I backtrack. I'm like, oh yeah, I heard my voice. I heard my whole intuition. I ignored it. And here we are, you know? So I
Yeah.
think because of that, it's like I've learned down my analytical mind is working, I think, in concert with my gut. And I've gotten to where I am because I've listened more to my gut. I've stopped shutting out the voices that are telling me what I'm supposed to do and what society wants me to do. And I'm just like, this is what I feel is right. And it feels really
Mm,
good. And yeah, I'm going with it and making something out of it. But I have to keep going and keep building. And if I listen to those old voices, I will never keep moving forward. So I can't look
mm.
back. I have to look forward. And yeah, just it's really powerful to like have your intuition save your life. So I'm going to just keep on listening because it's
Yes.
a good thing. I'm here.
Yeah, having 3 experiences like that, plus, like you said, getting into non-life-threatening situations that are bad, where you're like, I heard the voice and I did. So it's like you have the positive reinforcement and the negative reinforcement that just like over time, it's working in tandem to kind of convince your mind, like, yeah, just let's listen. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. Um, yeah, I'm working. I've been very trying to get into like somatic therapies and like just trying to get in touch with my own body. I feel like I can't tell if it's something about me or just like modern life that that I've like been so dissociated, or that that's kind of like such a struggle. But it's beautiful to hear like your journey with that. And I don't know, hearing your comfort and your confidence, and like, yeah, like I know that if I trust myself and I move forward, like, things will work out and I will be in the right path and that kind of thing. I think it's just encouraging to hear. So
The
I
other
love that.
thing that helped me that you
Yeah.
just made me realize is
Uh-huh.
most of my life, I was a people pleaser.
Yeah.
I would always, I would like sacrifice what I wanted to do or what I felt was right because somebody else was like, I need this.
Right.
And whether that was my boss or like a friend who didn't really appreciate me or whoever, I was always putting aside my needs or my, something for somebody else. And after doing that for so many years, you know, I just I couldn't do it anymore. It was just like if I died tomorrow, am I happy? Why am I not happy? Because I'm doing these things. Why am I continuous to doing this behavior? And so that was part of the evolution into what you were just talking
Mm,
about. It's like I sometimes get stuck too, but then I remember like if I fall back in these habits and I listen to people telling me what I'm supposed to be doing, whoever those people are, if it's one person or a whole group of people or a whole community or like the patriarchy, I just have to drop that. I'm never going to get anywhere. So like, let me shut off that channel. And like, the more I shut it off, that's what you made me think of.
mm,
It's like the more I shut off what I think I'm supposed to be doing or what people are telling me what I'm supposed to be doing, the more I can hear my own voice louder. Otherwise it gets drowned out. And so
yeah.
yeah, and it really doesn't happen overnight. It really is a practice and it's a really almost a meditative practice in that what do I want out of life? What would make me happy? How much time do I have? It's finite, so let's just start now,
Right.
you
Right.
know? But all
Yeah.
those things culminated into having it be what it is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like another example of your analytical mind working in tandem with your body, where they're both kind of saying the same thing, which is like, because you were saying like, because I think forecasting, okay, how much time do I have? Like asking these hard questions, like, I mean, of course, your body and your intuition are involved in that, but I feel like that's where the analytical brain is kind of most useful, is like, let's do a check on like this feels okay, like I'm in this, I mean, I have these habits and it feels this fine, I don't know, I'm not happy about it, but I think having that check of like, wait a second, like asking those hard questions, I feel like that's where the analytical side can really like do kind of like a know if it's a reality check, but just like a pause, right? Like hit pause and be like, okay, is this where we want to keep moving towards, or we want to make a conscious, deliberate decision to get out of those grooves and patterns? I think
Yeah.
is, yeah. So it's a nice, another example of them working in tandem well, I think, versus being at odds. um, but yeah, people pleasing, man, and that's just, I have yet to meet a woman that doesn't struggle with that, like on, in the past or currently or on some level. I think
Well,
that's
it's
a
because
big.
we've been trained, and
I
think who we've
know,
been trained by.
I
Like,
know, I know.
generations and generations of training, and we just
Yeah.
have to unlearn so much. And I think that's what's so powerful about, seeing the success of other, you know, women in business, other women just
Mm,
everywhere. Like, the reason I dropped the patriarchy is because, like, so much of us are like, I heard somebody, I'm only going to mention this because it kind of fits in what I'm talking about. I heard somebody who I really admire say something about another person that they really admire, and they're like, God, I hate them. I hate them. Like, why? Because they're
because they
succeeding,
admire. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
and you're not, and maybe you just, but instead of saying, I hate them, let's say, like, I want to support them, because the more I support them, the more options there are for me.
Yeah.
Whoa. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I'm not the first person to say that. Like, I'm just echoing what so many other people have said, but, like, I think about that all the time. It's just like,
Mm,
yeah, we've been so trained. So it's normal to be like, yeah, we struggle with these things, but let's stop struggling, and let's, like, stop struggling together, and let's, like, come together and, like, elevate so that this happens more and more. Because
hmm.
anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, no, I think it's even in the context of like, oh, like where is your energy at right now? Like I think and thinking about like play and stuff, I think with Solopreneur Playground and all this, I've been thinking about play so much and for the last couple of years. And one thing that's kind of like struck me over time is you can only really play if like everything is allowed. Like if like for a place to be safe, like emotionally safe, you have to have like you have to be able to feel difficult feelings. Like the whole range of human kind of emotions has to be um, not accessible, but permissible, right? Like allowed, like has to be. So I think in terms of the reason I say that is that I think like this gets you angry, right? Like this is the uh, the pushback energy where the flow there's like flow energy and like this is what you're moving towards and like this is what you're fighting against or this is what gets you um this is the stakes or the context like okay like this not it's not easy to go with your intuition and to push back on those voices shut down the channels and figure out what you're doing and it's not you're there's resistance there like from the inside and from the outside and I think um it's fun to hear you go like yeah like this is this gets you like you don't like this when the part of when people are using this language and having struggling in a way that keeps the struggle going maybe
Yeah.
um, right like no that's not okay I don't want to hear it I don't want to be part of it let's not do that anymore um yeah it's a different kind of energy but I think it's that's also what's alive it's alive in you it's alive for you and I think is part of I think often I don't know personally I think a lot about like protective anger because for me I was an odd kind of people pleaser. I wasn't like a typical people pleaser, but I was also, and like tapping into like anger, just like genuine, just anger, like clean, like healthy anger. Like, yeah, someone like you did something really mean to you or whatever. And just being like, yeah, like that's upsetting to me. It doesn't just make me sad and scared. It makes me angry. Like that was huge. Like, oh, for me, that happened like the last 5 or 6 years. And it was a big, like my whole kind of worldview and like the way I deal with things has shifted. And I think it's like I didn't know that I was like suppressing or like trying to I didn't know that I was cut off from my anger, right? Like it didn't occur to me until I was like, oh, I'm allowed to just feel angry about things. That's interesting. Like, and it really shaped how anyway, so now I'm very I feel like um I'm very to me a place like a space is not kind of safe if like someone can't get angry, you know what I mean? Like that's an important Like why we have I think so many people have a lot of, like I did, have a lot of secondary feelings about anger that prevent it from actually being okay to just like feel it and not threatening. For good reasons, right? I mean, people have been abused by people that didn't win anger and things like that. But anyway, I don't find it scary. I think it's great. I'm always like, yeah, because you need that. Like without that anger, like I think about my son and like, you know, if someone were to like try to hurt him, or even thinking about someone trying to hurt him, like I get angry. Like it's a natural. Like if you care about someone, you don't want not just people, but things hurting them, right? So like
Yeah.
I'm even at this point in my like processing of it, I'm suspicious when there is no anger. Like if someone's not angry, like if someone's hurt or so there's, and it's like there's no anger involved, like people witnessing or the person themselves, or and it's like, yeah, when something goes really wrong and there is no anger, I'm like, that's suspicious to me now. Whereas before it was suspicious if anger arose. Now it's like if anger doesn't arise, I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
Something is off. Um,
Oh,
yeah. And I try to preserve that in my son with like varying degrees of like I mean it's a little different for boys, so I sometimes don't know, but um I try to really validate his anger in the sense of like, yeah, like you're angry, like we can work on how to express it, like if you yell at my face, like up come up and like that's not okay, let's work on how else to do it. But I'm very big on like, um you feel angry, like that's not going to make me anxious or angry at you, or like make there be some kind of thing about it. Anyway, I'll get off my emotions safety soapbox, but that's
no, you're good. You're good. You're good. And I'm happy to hear that you've moved in a better space too. Like,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
just feels so much better, like
Feels so much better, right?
softer. Yeah.
Yes, it's related to nature in the sense that I think cutting off, there's something really absurd, right? Like humans, we have a range of feelings, and to be like, no, like this, it's like having a spectrum of colors, right? And you're like, yellow and red are not okay. Like we don't do that. Like we don't see them, we don't make them, we don't. It's like that's just why. Like, well, they're dangerous. Okay, why? Because they were connected to something dangerous once, right? Like I don't. Okay, like so now they're not available anymore. And if you interact with them, or you create these colors, or you see these colors, like even just passive, right, like response to like there's something wrong with you or something really bad is happening. It's like I feel like that's kind of what we do with feelings, is just this
Yeah.
feeling is okay, this feeling is not okay, this feeling is bad, this feeling is dangerous, but it's like they're just feelings. Like they're just yeah, like
Yeah.
it's weird that we do that. Yeah,
Yeah. The compartmentalization, it actually, it makes things so much worse because
it
then you're
does, it does,
burying and you're suppressing in ways that that stuff's going to come up somewhere and
it
somehow.
is.
You can't stop that.
Oh
So
yeah.
you might as well just like feel it. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's so crazy to think about. But yeah, it's true. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think if you don't know that it's and that's what, for me, like anger, I didn't recognize I had so much anger, that I had anger at all or whatever, because I was like doing a thing with it. And I think this is also very common for women, that like take it, turn it into myself, and then like, but it didn't feel like anger when I was kind of taking it to myself. It just felt like sadness. I just had a lot of sadness. It was like really sad. But it's like when I'd actually unpack that, like in therapy later, whatever, like actually this isn't, I mean, I'm sad, but it isn't sadness that I'm actually dealing with. I'm dealing with things. It's interesting to like kind of, like you said, it goes somewhere, and it's just interesting when it turns into these different forms and becomes this other thing that wasn't really, like, you could have just felt the feeling and moved on, right? But now it's like, yeah, like traumatizing you. It's like a freaking thing in your body that like can't. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's
Not only
interesting how
that,
that
is like
works.
when you have that emotion and if you're in a place where somebody can validate like what you're
Yes.
feeling is normal, and then
Yeah.
you don't feel like such a pariah. You're like,
Yep.
am I overreacting? Like, no, you're not. Like that, it's okay. And maybe they feel that way too. And then you have like a confidant, or you have like an outlet that's just like, but you don't know until you express that part of yourself. And then
Exactly.
multiple people are feeling the same way, but they're all not talking to themselves because like, we're not supposed to feel this way. And it's just like,
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
and
No, a lot
that's
of
what we
that's
do in
unspoken.
society.
I know, I know. I like dysfunctional societies. I know. Yeah, I think about that stuff very, very often, especially having a young child and just like, yeah, going through all these
I bet. Yeah.
changes and how I respond. Yeah, I'm just like, oof. Yeah, but I guess the tie-in is just nature. To me, it's like the more that I learn, the more I'm like, it's natural. Like it's natural to have feelings. Like you can call it bad or good. Like you can call it whatever you want, but like in the end, it's just like when a feeling arises, like I don't care what you like you said, it's not gonna you calling it bad or being like go away, like it's not gonna go away. You know what I mean? Just like I don't know. Yeah, you look at a tree and you're like, I don't like that tree. Like I want it to like I mean, you can chop it down and it can uproot. Like you can get rid of it, but it's just like it's a lot of work. And like, what do you? I don't know. Just like accept it, right? Like it just accept the nature of like what you are. But yeah, I think there it's interesting how much resistance and the kinds of resistance that people have to like their own natures, to nature itself. I think that yeah, and that's something I really appreciate about your work and how you talk about things. I think they're like, and it's cool to hear this progressive acceptance, I think, of nature and like your intuition is part of nature, your body is part of nature. And I think it's cool that your parents sounds like they had a very conscious um, value around nature, and then how you internalize that and kind of used it in your work and like felt it out over time was like your thing, right? But like you already have like nature is good, like nature is not scary, and then okay, like what does that mean for me and how I engage it over time, and making your life out of a version of that. I think it's very very cool. It's just very cool to hear more of that story. um, yeah, that's inspiring. I appreciate it. Uh, I also love like coming to the Pacific Northwest. Like I have similar, just like I just like love the nature here. Like so,
So
it's
good.
super good.
The
It's just so
best.
beautiful. Yeah, I can't wait to explore it more. Especially like this will be our first full summer here actually because we just moved last August, so it'll be our first like. It's already like it's starting to be spring. I'm so excited. We have a nature journal. We like glue little leaves and things into our like just
Yes.
it's
Oh,
just
cool.
yeah, it's fun. Like I'm really hyped about it. I want to do all the like kindergarten things with my son. Like
Hell
go look
yes.
at go look at the
Yes.
flowers.
Tap back into your own childhood too. Like that's the fun
Exactly.
part. Just like relive
Exactly.
it. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
100% my plan. um, but no, this is so cool. This has been just so fun to talk to you, Alicia. Thank you for letting me go off on my like
Oh my gosh, of course.
emotions, nature. Like,
Yeah. I mean, it's all like connected. So yeah. No, I loved hearing it. Thank you for sharing.
oh yeah, no, thank you for sharing your life and what's interesting to you. Um, yeah, I don't have a good like closing question, but I guess I am curious. Is there anything else in what we've talked about that feels like alive for you that you'd want to explore, or does it feel like okay, this is a good bookend to our conversation?
I think something that we were talking about earlier kind of made me think about like kind of a business goal and a just an artist goal of mine is,
Oh,
I have reached out to other muralists and artists in Seattle who, I sometimes see on the art beat where we'll come together and we'll be contract working to install a mural for like a nonprofit. And I've talked with two of them who I really respect and admire, love their art. And I'm just like, we have a lot in common. And if we like come together and elevate each other with like, if I get a gig that doesn't sound right for me, I'm going to pitch them to you guys because you could totally execute this. And instead of them running around trying to find, another artist who might already be completely, established, like let's just come together and like help each other like have some wins. So, and they were totally game. But I think that's something else I'm trying to be really mindful of is like I don't want to compete with other starting out artists, especially if they're, you know, non-binary, maybe not of the privileged, upper middle class. Like I want to diversify art communities. And I think just having conversations with other people, sharing resources, sharing knowledge, sharing skill is kind of where I'm also putting my energy. So
mm,
yeah, and it all comes back to this just like, yeah, those habits that we all have, especially as women, is like there's a reason that we all have those habits. So let's be consciously aware, and let's move away from those habits, and let's start our own thing, and let's like, you know, just empower each other to kind of like be movers and shakers. That's kind of where I'm trying to see where I can go, and it's easy to talk about, but it's
Hard to do.
really challenging to actually execute, because you're
Yes.
always going to come up against the, well, they picked me over her, or they picked her over me. Like, that's one way
Hmm.
to think about it. But another way to think about it is like, yes, they picked her over me and she deserves it and she's going to do amazing things. And maybe because of this experience, she's going to get like a gig that maybe she doesn't want or she doesn't have time for. Who's she going to think of? The other people in her group who are other upcoming women artists. That's kind of the goal, is just like, let's do more of that. And let's not hate on each other and like just be like ooey over, the success that we have, because that's what the patriarchy thrives on. And uh, yeah, that's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. It makes me think of two things. One is like I see a connection between you talking about kind of lifting up other artists and being able to refer, like kind of create this network where resources and opportunities can flow kind of more freely instead of just competing. Um, feels like I could bucket that under like collaboration, as far as like you doing tattoos is like a different kind of collaboration with your art with someone else, like them as canvas, them as like co-creator, person with the idea, and they're using your style. And then what you're talking about here is like other types of collaboration where you're collaborating with other artists to do other kinds of work and collaborate in other ways. And I think there's something really neat about it. Sounds like you have your studio, you have your art practice, like you're very clear about like this is my style and this is my work, right? This is how I work. Like you know what I mean? You have that really stable. It kind of makes sense to me that kind of the next mm, big kind of step in your journey is like, okay, like now that I know like me as an artist and me as like I like feeling established and sure about that, and having just the systems and the clients and like all that kind of stuff to be able to think about, okay, like I want to collaborate now, like how do I diversify and collaborate with like different kinds of people in different ways, different kinds of clients, different kinds of artists, like let's make that happen. I think there's a kind of stability that I think you need to be able to do that well, because a lot of people, I think a lot of people starting out that want to collaborate, but then like if you don't really know who you are or what you do, and it's like it's kind of hard, how do you fit in? And I mean, not that you can't, but it's just I think there is something, especially I've just noticed that pattern, I guess, with artists in particular, but business owners too, right? Like you kind of have to know what your thing is to collaborate, I think, very well, or even with other people, or there's kind of like a level of it that you need. So that's one thing it makes you think of, which is cool, just that both the things that are live here right now feel like to me forms of collaboration, which I'm very passionate about. So I love hearing about that. And then the other thing is this thing that I learned on Instagram recently about trees. I don't know, I follow some like National Geographic and like random accounts that have these baby sloth pictures and things. But I learned that trees, and it was the Instagram caption, right? So I don't know the details of this, but I learned that the root systems of trees, and I can't remember if it was the roots themselves or some sort of like network related to the roots, but that they share resources with like not just their own species of trees, but like all the other, maybe it's plants, but I imagine it's other trees because the roots have to probably go pretty deep. But I was just really struck by like they don't discriminate about like type of tree. They're not like I'm a poplar is gonna like share with it. Like that the system is really connected to the different species. And I think in nature there is competition for resources, and the fact that like we were saying, I mean, we're all gonna die, right? There are limits, like there are constraints in terms of the earth can only hold so many, like there's physical constraints to things. But I think in nature, I don't know, a lot of people, a lot of very competitive people, I think, will use a lot of examples from nature about competition, like evolution, competition, like everything's competition, but like actually how, I don't know, like hearing things like that about trees, I'm like, yeah, but actually like nature is extremely collaborative. Like there's kind of, it's interesting that you can toggle, like, are you looking for collaboration evidence or competition evidence? I think in nature you can kind of find examples to support your own view. But that's another thing. Oh, actually, the third thing that makes you think of is another thing about nature that I learned recently that I thought was pretty mind-blowing. I don't know if you saw this, but there was like, there's this idea that wolves from like a wolf pack, there's a beta wolf and an alpha wolf. That concept, right? So
Yep.
I don't know if you saw recently they like proved that that was only in captivity. Like wolf packs in the wild, when they're just healthy and happy and doing their own thing, there's actually like a family run. There's like a male wolf and a female wolf that are kind of like the head of their wolf pack, and they kind of work in harmony and in this very peaceful way with their wolf pack. And then when when one of the kids wants to go start their own thing, they go start their own thing, and they're like, sure, go ahead. Like there's no alpha beta except when they're held in captivity. Now suddenly they're in this human designed cage system thing, and then they throw wolves from different packs together, then they start fighting and figuring out who's alpha and who's beta. Like that does happen, but only in the context of like artificial environments with high stress. Like basically traumatized wolves will do that. And it really struck me because I think there's so many particularly I think like very masculine and very businessy paradigms that come out of competition with specifically the alpha beta wolf, right? Like who's an alpha male and a beta male, and it literally like is language from this like one guy's research about wolves that was of wolves in captivity. I think there's something really interesting about like I don't know, when I guess like this kind of like harsh competition comes from like, well, that's Darwinian, or that's like, look, this is how nature works. Like it's ruthless, it's brutal, like And I feel like in nature there's such a variety of like kinds of I don't know ways that animals interact, and it's just interesting that the ones that very competitive people pick to prove that like see like this is just how nature works. It's like yeah, actually, it's how nature works when constrained by humans in extremely artificial environments with lots of stress. And I think like there's a lot of things in, I think in the way that like modern lifestyle is, and the way that our systems work, in I don't know
Oh
whatever
yeah.
we're in, right? That like are kind of like that, where it's like yeah, it's like nature, but like you're actually talking about like a trauma response to nature put in a box, right? Like versus like how does nature operate when nature's just doing its thing, and like I think it's anyway. That's
When there's
something else.
balance. When there's balance,
When there's
there's different
balance,
behavior, and when there's imbalance, there's other behavior.
yeah,
And yeah, it's interesting. Like anytime there's a scientific resource, it's like, well, what's the context of that resource? Is
right,
it the
exactly.
whole thing? Or did you like
Mm-hmm.
read something and you liked one sentence and you're like, pluck, everything comes from this? Like I'm
Yeah.
reading this book right now called Vagina Obscura, and it tracks the history of how male scientists did all this research on the woman's body and reproductive system, but they only gleaned a little bit that served their purpose to stay in power.
Mm.
They took like, you know, one seed of the entire tree and they were like, this is the all being and all knowing, and the rest of the tree is like, but there's so much more that will never be published and hasn't been published until recently. There have been
Mm.
more scientists who've been like uncovering the rest of the tree, but it's exactly what you're talking about with the
Yeah.
wolves. It's like the nuance and the context is totally manipulated and
Mm-hmm.
totally spun on its head in order to serve an agenda.
Right, to serve a preconception, which is like the opposite of what science like is right. It's like you're supposed to be looking for more info. Yeah, burying research that you have in order because it doesn't fit the one thing that you want to do. Yeah. Oh man, there's been so many like science scandals I've been reading about lately too that are I don't know. I don't know. That's more about just scientists manipulating their data for but it's similar like it's yeah, anyway. It's in the same vein of like what is the motivated reasoning here? For like yeah, like you have this information or this data, and like how do you decide which things get put together how and how you're presented and why? And I mean it's yeah, it's really rough. But the wolf thing, yeah, it's just such a like I've never even questioned the wolf thing because it's just so it's one of those like propaganda things. You just hear it all the time. You're like, of course this is true. And I was like, what? Like this is all based on one guy's research about wolves in captivity. Are you kidding me? Like the level of impact that that one guy's observations of wolves in captivity has had on like um just I don't know our society at large is like it's just fascinating. Like how did that happen? Yeah,
Yeah,
because it
totally.
fits a paradigm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I love that you're doing your work with these because that's another. I would also tend to think about my work in terms of these like really big picture things, and it kind of, I don't know, because I am still in my head too much about it. Like, I just love that you're like working intuitively and through conversation and with other people, like through these kinds of questions and the impact that you're having, and that yeah, it just, again, inspiring for me to hear how you think about these things and are like kind of organically and intuitively growing your kind of your practice as like the extent, right? The influence, the types of work, who you work with, like it's like just growing so organically, so beautifully. I think it's very, very cool to hear about. Thank you so much
Thanks.
for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for, yeah, letting me share.
Yeah, no, this has been so fun. Thanks, Nalisha.
Thank you so much.
Thank
This went so
you.
fast. Oh, and
Well,
happy Eclipse Day.
yes, I wish. Is it cloudy where you're
Oh
at
yeah.
out there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The fact that I
totally
know it's
California.
happening is awesome.
Yes, it is. It is awesome. I had an alarm go off and I looked down and I was like, yeah, cool, cool.
Cool.
No, it is very cool. Yeah, yeah. Happy Eclipse Day. It's a special day. Um, Maybe the next one we'll get to see. It'd be cool.
That'd be rad.
It'd be
I'm a fan
awesome.
of that.
Yes, yes. Hopefully. Do you have anything cool planned today? Anything?
No, I'm actually so speaking of like going off on different I have a wood burner and I just got a new art box for my all my tattoo tools. So I'm actually wood burning a flowy design into the case so it's personalized to me. So that's what I'm
Cool.
working on today. As yeah, I'm gonna
Oh, I
do
love
some
that.
content of like time lapse of me working on it and post it on the gram. And but it's hard. Oh my gosh,
The wood
wood
burning.
burning tools are like not easy. It's like a whole different.
You said you just got it. Is it a new? This is a new skill
I've
or a
had
new
it. I got
practice?
it during the pandemic, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I've made a few things with it. Like I used to work at a place that needed a wooden sign, and I've done a few stuff with it. But this
Okay.
is for me. Like this is my art case. Hopefully, the
Yeah.
last art case I'll need in like a few years or more. So
Yeah.
I'm putting a lot of energy into it, making sure it's like perfect, but it's not perfect. And that's the other thing I kind of like about it is like it's on wood. So it's like the knots of the wood is just like, I can't do a straight line. I'm just like, okay, then the straight line's not supposed to be there. Like, let it go.
Right,
So,
right. Totally.
so just like ebbing and flowing with that. But that's what I'm working on
Yeah.
today. How about you?
That is so cool. I love that. I love that. Um, I used to paint a lot, and like I would paint, or I would use drips to paint, or because I like, if there wasn't like the paint doing something on its own, I just felt way too in control of the whole situation. So I like make sure that there's like crazy things happening so that I can like work with
Cool.
that, and like, yeah, it just was like very important to me. I was like, if I'm pre-planning this and then do it, like, what is the point? Why am I even painting? So it makes me think like it needs to have some like, um, something I didn't intend for, otherwise it like it truly felt like pointless. But for me today, yeah, my son is on spring break, so we're just spending a lot of time together, which is cool because actually I'm planning to do like a semi homeschool thing with him next year, so we're going to spend a lot of time together. He's been in like full-time school for the last 2 years, so it's kind of a different. So yeah, I'm trying to work out. I'm practicing just like not having to be on with him, because I feel like as a parent, like what I think when your kid's in school all day, especially like he's been, yeah, 3, 4, 5, or like he's young. I just like when he's home, I'm like trying to make the most of it. Just like I just feel myself be very on. So I'm trying to work on like, okay, like what's it like for us to just be like, not on a weekend or not have an activity, but just like be around all the time together, and me not have to feel like I'm mom mode. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my goal this week, is like practice just being together without. And it's hard because he's used to he's very in interactive, let's say, and part of it's me always being on, so he's used to me being on all the time, and like, let's do this together, let's do this together. I'm like trying to practice, just like, dude, you can go figure it out. So
Yeah.
do
Well,
things
yeah, that's
in
a lot of energy
parallel.
for you.
It's a
Like,
lot. It is. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't like associating a person like if I'm tired, he's coming home from school, I'm like, ugh, like I don't want to see him, and I hate that. I want to be able to see my son. It's kind of like with David too. Like I don't like getting in modes where, because of my own interaction with a person, I start to like, it's not resentment, but it's just start to not want to be near them. I'm like, whew, like it's yeah. So anyway, so I'm trying to practice like, okay, what are things that we can enjoy each other's company regardless of how much energy I have, right? I don't have to be contingent on like me being awake and I don't know. So yeah, that's what I'm working on today. Being in my
Nice.
son's company. Yes. Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah.
great. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like it'll serve you long term, finding that
Yes. Yes.
navigating key. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You hit it on the head. Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to do this for like 15 years. Like, I don't want to be on for 15 years. Yeah, we got a
Yeah.
lot of time
And
ahead
that
of us.
you'll physically be able to, like,
No, right.
help
Exactly.
yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 But it's like a different way of thinking. So I'm trying to really, uh, yeah. And it takes a lot of experimentation. So we're just experimenting in that vein. But I can't wait to see. I'm going to follow you on, I'm going to check out on Instagram when you have your box design like ready. I'm very excited to see that. And that's going to be
Cool.
cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited to see
Absolutely.
it too.
Yeah.
It's
Alicia,
like
this has
a
been
it's
so
like
fun.
its own thing. I'm just a passenger. I'm just like, here we go,
Yeah.
riding a wave.
Just holding
Yeah,
what will emerge.
holding and
Um,
breathing.
holding and breathing. I love that.